This forum is basically for you. We want to share some information with you, some of the things that are important to us in the ministry, and some of the things that I'll talk about you probably already know. But we'll talk about them anyway, because that is the purpose for our going around. One of the basic things, what are we doing this roadshow for in the second week of our roadshow? Basically to give more awareness to people about some changes in our laws, some of the things that are important to us, as you can see from our banners that we have here. And this banner basically depicts why we exist, what is the most important thing for us, that we want the message to go out there. And at the same time, we give an opportunity in these consultations for people to raise their concerns. When we have meetings with employers, as I've had yesterday in Ba, they've raised some of their concerns with me. And I've also raised the concerns that my ministry has with employers, with some sectors in particular. So it's an opportunity for us to have that sort of exchange. But just in highlight, just brief, I'm sure you're all familiar with my ministry. You have the vision of the ministry there that is under the name of the ministry, the vision being the most important thing for us. And that is we want to have employment growth, more people employed, better quality employment, but decent work. People must be treated decently. And decently is defined as making sure that we meet the requirements in our legislation. When the requirements for those legislations are met, people are being treated decently. Under the vision that we have of decent work and employment growth, you've got a listing of all the services we provide. From the labor standard services, and you can see under labor standard services, it talks about labor compliance. That means making sure that employers comply with the labor laws, child labor, and the issue of complaints. And then you have the list of all of the other areas in which we provide services listed right across to National Occupational Health and Safety, right at the end here. Then we have workers' compensation and mediation service. So that provides an overall view of what we try to, of all the services that we have in our ministry. Underneath, at the bottom there, you see those words at the bottom. That is basically the mission of the ministry, what we are trying to do. You can see the first one is generating employment growth. That is very important for us. Cabinet has just endorsed our national employment policy, which identifies the things that we need to do as a government, that the Fiji government needs to do with all the stakeholders to try to increase employment. Because you know, right now, our unemployment rate in Fiji is quite low, it's 4.5%, but our challenge in particular is for youth unemployment. Youth unemployment is at 18.1%. And we have particular challenges for urban youth unemployment. Rural youth unemployment is lower than urban youth unemployment. And we have challenges also for women's unemployment. So there are particular challenges in these areas, and also for the employment of the people that are disabled. So in some of these areas we have particular concerns, things that we need to focus on. And those challenges are also dealt with to some extent in the national employment policy. And the other ones that we have here is promote decent work and productivity, decent work and productivity. Then we have encourage good faith employment relations. That's very critical for us. We want to make sure, we believe that in a good industrial relations climate in Fiji will lead to greater productivity. Because when you have a poor industrial relations climate, you have dissatisfaction of workers, dissatisfaction of employees, it leads to strikes, leads to conflicts. That reduces it has a negative impact on the reputation of Fiji for investors, and it leads to a lot of spiraling things that can go out of control for our country. So good faith employment relations is very important for us. Enforcing safe workplaces to be safe, that's in relation to our occupational health and safety, and also ensuring social justice. By social justice, we mean that people must be treated justly. Employers must also be treated justly. There are complaints sometimes on both sides. Workers complain about employers, employers complain about workers. And there needs to be justice from both of these sets of people. There were just some laws that I've been emphasizing as I've been going around the country. One is the national minimum wage. I know now that we're getting into close to the elections, there's a lot of hype about national minimum wages, but the national minimum wages in our country is still in place. You go around the country, if you go around the country as I've been going, you realize that there are a lot of people that are still being paid much less than the existing national minimum wage. There are a lot of people that are still being paid much less than that. And that is the concern that I've seen, going around from Vite level, Bono level, even without not talking about raising the minimum wage to what people are saying, $4 or $5, just the level that it is now, there's a lot of non-compliance. So this is one of our concerns, to make sure that at least people get that $2.68 per hour. So over and above the $2.68 per hour, you're all familiar that the national minimum wage is $2.68 per hour. And this is, that national minimum wage is also the lowest wage that you can be paid for people in some services, like the security service, where for the security guards, the lowest wage is $2.68. That $2.68 per hour is also the wage. If you pay for somebody to look after your baby at home on an hourly basis, you can't pay less than this amount. Or if you want somebody to come and clean your windows and clean your house, or do some work on your house, clean the roof, for that you can't pay less than this $2.68 per hour. It's just a blanket amount. So it's pegged at that level to take into account also the interest of small business owners. Small business owners. Yesterday, we were at a village in the west, and they were talking about the people that they employ in their schools. You know, the handyman, the people that help out in the office. So some of these workers in these schools, they are not being paid this national minimum wage. So that is something that we told them that you have to pay. It's a basic right, and this is what we mean by social justice. These minimum things that should be given to people, it must be given to them. Must be given to them. So that's what we're focusing on, national minimum wage. But over and above the national minimum wage, in 10 different sectors, you see these charts that we have? You see these charts? We've got these charts up around the place. You can have a look at them later on. In each of these sectors, it identifies printing trade, wholesale and retail, hotel and catering, garment industry, sawmilling. Yeah, the chart is the blue one on the side there. Oh, in front here? Yeah. So all of those things, it identifies the minimum requirements that must be given to workers in these sectors. Minimum requirements, eh? And you can see the hours of work are defined, either a 5-day week at 9 hours per day, or a 6-day week at 8 hours per day. I don't know what your hours are as journalists. 24 hours a day, 7 days? That'll be an interesting question. But journalism is not covered under here. They would be, unless you're unionized, you would be covered by a collective agreement. But if not, I think you might just be covered by the national minimum wage. Can you? Journalist? Yeah, probably. So there's no special grouping for you. At the moment, we are having some discussions. There have been some discussions on having some additional sectors. Because you see here, there are some 10 sectors. 10 sectors which identifies hours of work, the fact that public holidays have to be paid. Right? There's some rules about that for public holiday. You have to work the day before and the day after the public holiday. Then you can be paid for the public holiday in between. Eh? But if you don't work the day before, don't work the day after, there's some other rules that come in. Public holidays have to be paid. Then under these minimum terms and conditions, you can see it identifies the rates of pay that people should be paid. The minimum rates of pay. Minimum. So one of the concerns that we have sometimes, when you put the rate here, everybody comes down to this rate. This is not meant to pull all the wage rates down. It just sets the floor. It should set the floor, and people can go up. We're very thankful that we met some people out in the hotel industry where they told us, while all these rates are here in their particular hotel, they actually pay a minimum of $5.15 for all their workers. We're very glad that some hotels can be like that. They don't treat this as something that they come down to. They treat it as a floor, and if they can afford to do it, they go up. So those are kinds of practices that we like to see. And you can see from all of them, it identifies the different occupations and what the minimum rates are. And I can tell you that a lot of these minimum rates are not being adhered to. not being adhered to by in some cases. So that is something that we want to correct. We want people to know about this so that they can demand for their rights, and you want employers too to make sure that they provide these things to their employees. So the minimum rates are there. You have the overtime rates. Overtime is mandatory in all of these different sectors, all of the different sectors that we have here. You can see the overtime rates. Can you see what it says in the overtime rates? It has different sorts of rules or regulations for the different sectors. It has the provisions for sick leave, 10 days, working days with medical certificate. We have had some questions asked. People have told us, my employer says you can't take more than 1 day being sick in 1 month. There's no such requirement under the law. The law just says you're allowed 10 working days with medical certificate for a year. It does not say you can only take 1 day a month or maximum of 2 days per month. There's nothing like that. It just says work 10 working days with medical certificate. Provisions for annual leave, 10 working days leave per year. Meal allowances. If you are supposed to only work 9 hours per day and your employer asks you to, and you as employer want your workers to work for an additional few hours, over and above the 9 hours they're supposed to work in 1 day, you have to provide them with meals or give them a meal allowance. That is the requirement in all of these 10 different sectors. The need for subsistence allowance. If you move workers away from where they normally work and you want them to go and work somewhere else for some time, in 3 of these sectors, 4 of these sectors, you can see for the wholesale and retail, sawmilling, road transport, and building and civil, there are subsistence allowances that have to be paid. The conditions for casuals. If you bring in people to work as a casual, that means somebody doesn't come to work, you bring somebody else from another place to fill in their place for a day, you have to pay more than you would pay than the minimum rate. You would have to pay 25% of this minimum rate. So you can see the barman, there's a barman there. If you look at the hotel and catering trade, you see the barman is $3.31 per hour. That's the minimum rate. If you bring in a casual to fill in for your barman when the barman is not there, you can't pay him $3.31. You have to pay 25% more than $3.31, which is $4.13 per hour. That would be the same thing for any of these other types of jobs. That's the requirement in this. And then we have the bereavement leave. At the bottom you can see bereavement leave, which is 3 days bereavement leave for each of the workers that we have. Those are the allowances that people have. Those are the benefits that people should be expected to be given. So if people work for a year in any of these things, there are some other conditions. You have to work for 3 months. You have to work for 3 months continuously in an organization before you become entitled to the full range of all of these particular benefits. So those sorts of provisions are put in place to protect the smaller and micro enterprises, the ones that are only working for a small amount of time. So all of these laws, they are designed to look after the interests. We try to do it to look after the interests of everybody, the workers and the different kinds of employees. Basically, for the small micro enterprises, the small medium enterprises, these laws are also put there to also protect them. We don't want to raise our conditions too high and it becomes too difficult for small and micro enterprises, medium enterprises to be able to meet, and then they collapse as a result. We want to make sure that all enterprises flourish, that they do well, that they are able to perform better. So those are some of the laws that we have there. In relation to this particular issue, you know that we have some new laws coming into place about maternity leave. Maternity leave now will increase from 84 days to 98 days from January next year. I think most of us in Fiji will be familiar with that. We hope that that will have to be met by all employers. The increase in the maternity leave to 98 days by January next year. We have the incoming paternity leave. Paternity leave is for fathers when their wife or their partner gives birth. They have the right to apply. What does it say? If they are the primary caregiver. What does it say? No. It says here, a man whose partner is entitled to maternity leave under this part would be entitled to maternity leave if she were employed, is entitled to, the wife has to be employed. Okay, so paternity leave is if your wife is employed. Okay. So for the man to be able to take paternity leave, the wife must be employed. So she takes maternity leave and is entitled to a paternity leave and to abstain from work for a period of not less than 5 working days, provided that he is or is to be a primary caregiver for his child. Primary caregiver means, what is a primary caregiver? Person that is basically there all the time, not just pop in 5 minutes and disappear for 8 hours. Basically to be there, to be a caregiver, not to look after him for what? For half an hour, then for 8 hours go and drink grog somewhere else. That's not primary caregiver. You know, the intent of this paternity leave is to be there to look after the wife and the child when they are born. That's the intent. And I keep stressing this everywhere I go because we always have a lot of complaints about abuse of certain other things like sick leave. Everywhere I've gone so far, employers have been complaining about the abuse of sick leave. People are not sick, but they get a medical certificate and they go and hang around town or they go and do other things. The law says in that sort of cases, we can take the doctor to task and the employee to task because it's basically fraud. And do that, it's like theft. So the same thing here for this paternity leave. It is a leave put in place to allow the father to be with the mother to provide care, not to go to attend a movie or go and plant cassava in his garden or to do other things like that. Is to be a primary caregiver. That's very critical to understand. So 5 days to assist the wife in looking after the child after the baby is born. That's a new thing that is coming in. The other one is the family care. Where's the family care? Family care leave, which is for family care. Then go. Okay. A family care leave. It is for looking after members of your immediate family and members of your household. Immediate family here consists of your spouse, husband or wife, your children, your parent, and your siblings. Siblings, your brothers and sisters. Those people are defined as immediate family. And household means the people who live in the same house as you and you are financially dependent on one another. People from the village or other relatives that are staying with you. And you can only apply for these things like family care leave if you have completed more than 3 months continuous service. So there are some conditions. You can't just work 1 week and automatically get family care leave. You must have worked at least for 3 months, and you will be entitled to paid family care of not less than 5 working days during each year of service. So there are some other requirements there, but it's basically to give the worker, I think if there might be a situation at home when there's really nobody else available to provide that particular care at that point in time, then the worker can apply for this family care leave to go and look after somebody who is a member of their family or member of their household. Once again, this is something that you want to see that is not abused, right? Like we have heard a lot of cases of sick leave abuse. Sick leave should not, sick leave is really a privilege that we have. So those are some of the new laws that are coming in that we wanted to mention here. The other thing that I wanted to mention very briefly for employers is some of the issues that we have on our National Employment Center. You see our National Employment Center somewhere up here? This is a center that we have established to try to help people that are unemployed, to give them some assistance to get some form of employment or some livelihood or at least some money for some time. And what we do under the National Employment Center, people that are unemployed of any age, they can come and be registered with the National Employment Center. They are registered with us. We provide them some sort of, we do aptitude testing for them, identify what their special aptitudes, their characteristics are. We provide them some training, some counseling and life skills. Where people don't have any qualifications, we might try to assist them with some employment skills, some training to give them some skills. We put them onto our database, and employers that are looking for unemployed people with some sort of qualifications or experience can contact with us, and we can tell them who we have on our list. We give them their contacts, and employers can contact them and hopefully employ them. So that's a service that we have. Then we also enter into memorandums of understanding with employers who are willing to take some of the people that we have on our database and give them workplace attachments. Because, you know, people come out with qualifications, they know a lot of things, but they've never really worked in a workplace. And knowing how to do something and doing it in a real life workplace are two different things. So by giving them these workplace attachments, it gives them the ability to improve themselves, become more competent, become more marketable, and at the same time, it provides the employer an opportunity to take on a young person. And you know, young people are very enthusiastic, they're looking forward to do things, they're very bright. You have an opportunity to make use of this person within the workplace. So it's a mutual win-win situation. For the person that's looking for a job, it gives them an opportunity to get work experience. For the employer, it gives them the opportunity to have a young person who wants to learn and probably can do a lot of things for you. A lot of things that maybe older people that have learned bad habits are not prepared to do. So we have this arrangement. So we encourage employers to sign memorandums of understanding with us so we can put the people that we have on our database on attachment in your organizations and give them that opportunity. Currently, under the current system, everybody that goes on attachment gets an allowance of $60 per week. Half is paid by the employer, half we pay. Very soon, however, because those allowances, that level of allowance has been in place since 2010. So we have now decided to increase the allowances. It's now more than 8 years, so that anybody with a diploma or higher qualification will get an allowance of $120 per week, and anybody with lower qualifications will get an allowance of $100 per week, but these are half to be paid by the employer, half to be paid by the ministry. All of this is designed to try to assist the unemployed to get some work experience, and basically that's the intent from our point of view, to assist them to get some work experience, maybe brighten up their CV to get, and then they'll become much more marketable as they go out into the workplace. The other services that we provide under this employment center for retired people, we have the volunteer scheme. Under that volunteer scheme, we have graduates that register with us. We farm them out as volunteers to organizations. And the graduate volunteers, they also get an allowance, I think, of 100 or 120? 120, yeah? Yeah, so if we have graduates that are in our workplace, they don't have employment yet, we can place them as volunteers for a period of up to one year, or up to 6 months, with an allowance of 120. So that is also designed to give them that workplace experience, and that makes them more marketable into the future. The other part of the volunteer scheme that we have under the National Employment Center is former civil servants. At the moment, it's teachers and nurses that we place into other countries around the Pacific. We place them there. They're not really, they're volunteers. The term is volunteers, but they also get the salary. Yeah? Half of the salary is paid by the country that they go to, whether it's Kiribati or Tuvalu or Marshalls or all of these other countries. The other half is paid by the Fiji government. Huh? Yeah, Vanuatu and Solomons, all of these other countries. The other people, for foreign employment, we have been, on request from other countries, we have facilitated people getting employed in places like Seychelles, teachers that we've sent to the Seychelles. I believe airline companies have come to recruit people here for cabin crew. We facilitate those kinds of services in the past. And at the moment, for foreign work, we have arrangements with Australia and New Zealand governments for seasonal workers to go and work in those countries. We also had arrangements initially for carpenters to go and work in New Zealand, But at the moment, we have a big shortage of carpenters here. So I'm a bit reluctant with allowing a lot of our carpenters going, because a lot of our construction companies are bringing in workers from Bangladesh and Philippines, basically because there's a shortage here. So we have this, we have an issue of shortage of workers around Fiji. I've been to places in Ba where there are factories that they cannot run lines in the factory because they don't have enough workers. So there are work opportunities available for people around the country. The other thing that I wanted to mention about this, about the employment incentives, as I mentioned before, we have particular challenges for assisting people to get employment in certain classes of people. One, people who have never worked before. Very difficult for them to get employment. And I can understand. Employers want experienced people. That's why we do all of this work that we do on the neck, to put them on board, put them on attachment. But also there are some incentives under the Fiji Revenue and Customs Service. But these incentives are more for profit-making organizations, because it's about tax rebates on the amount of money that you pay to people that have never worked before. If a company employs somebody who has never worked before, never ever worked before, takes that person on, the amount of money, the wages that they pay that person, they can claim a 200% tax rebate on what they actually paid to him. So when you calculate the taxes, that taxation on your profits will drop when you increase the amount of the book value of what you paid for that person, so that the taxation on the profits will drop. So that will be beneficial to profit-making organizations. So there's a 200% tax rebate if you employ somebody who has never worked before. There is a 300% rebate if you employ a disabled person. So if, for instance, if Kenny here is blind and I employ him to work in my company and I pay him $200 per week, when I go and claim my taxes, because of the tax rebate of 300 on the books, it will say that I'm not paying him 200, but I'm paying $600. So when they do that, your labor expense goes up. So your amount of your taxation on your profit will reduce. So that is a benefit for profit-making companies. There are other things that are in place there to assist, for instance, people. There are some students who, when they are at the Fiji National University, they need to do a 6 months workplace attachment in order to complete the requirements for their diploma or their degree. A lot of the qualifications now require this 6 months process. So now there's also a tax rebate given by Fiji Revenue and Customs Service for the 6 months these people come to work on work placement in your company. The amount of money that you pay them, I think you get probably 150% or 200% tax rebate on that amount of money. So all of these incentives being given by my ministry, by Fiji Revenue and Customs Service, are all designed to try to assist the young or the disabled or the disadvantaged to get employment, and also for them to get their training. There are also tax rebates if your employer, if you as an employer send somebody to do a certificate or a diploma, say in Fiji Sun, they decide to send one of their staff to go and do a diploma in journalism or a degree in journalism. The amount of money that your employer will pay for you for the tertiary, for the tuition level costs, they can claim 150% of the money they spend on your tuition cost when they claim for their taxation. So it'll reduce the taxation. That again is put in place to encourage people to train their workers. The other big change that is going to take place next year is in relation to this issue of workers' compensation. Workers' compensation, I'm sure you're all familiar. Somebody gets hurt or suffers illness or something that has a big impact on their life as a result of work, they can claim compensation from their employer. From next year, for any workers' compensation for something that happens from 1st of January 2019, they will not apply to our ministry. It will now be handled by the ACCF, the Accidents Compensation Commission of Fiji. These are the people who are looking after road accidents. You know, the old third-party insurance system, these are the people looking after that. But for that particular process, the funding for for the workers' compensation. Currently, if Vili's company, one of his workers gets injured in the workplace and has to pay compensation, his company will have to pay direct to the worker. Or if he has got insurance for workers' compensation, then the insurance company will pay. But under this new system, the amount of money to be used for compensation will come from the training levy that employers are already paying. All employers are already paying a levy of 1% of their gross payroll to the Fiji National University. Part of that money will be used to pay for the costs of any workers' compensation. Okay, that's a lot of things that I've been talking about.